Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marnise Nicole, and today is another artist diary. I did a poll which everyone wanted to see next, and this is what went up. And this is actually really relevant because this topic today just happened to me. So last week I had 2 art shows in 1 week, and something that has come up in other art shows, but I haven't really talked about it, that I've experienced, is that small talk in an art show is really hard. First of all, I was so nervous all week, and unfortunately my grandfather passed away as well, and then also it was my birthday. Can you imagine how many highs and lows I've had this week? Like, seriously, it's been awful, and then it's been amazing, and then it's been awful, and then it's been amazing, and then now we're here filming another artist diary. And I wanted to specifically sit back and relax and talk to you today because I really have to say that making small talk about your art is so difficult, and no one, I feel like, talks about that. So I had these 2 art shows, vastly different art shows, in fact, and I had these 2 art shows scheduled in the same week with 5 paintings in total. So the first art show I was on February 6th. It was in a workspace. If you are not in a major metropolis, you may not have heard of these places. They're basically office buildings, or an office floor, or, you know, a place you go that is an office building. They have conference rooms, they have cubbies, they have just actual office enclosed spaces, and they rent out these rooms and these spaces, and they charge you to use that space for yourself. So if you are an artist and you have a client meeting, but you only have your studio and it's messy, you don't want to bring people to your studio, and you still need somewhere to have your client meetings, you can pay for the 3 hours you're going to have your client meeting on a Monday and pay for this space and basically rent this space for office space. So there they have a gallery wall, and so we go to this event, and I decided I've been very not me the last couple of years. I started getting very high levels of like social anxiety because I work from home now, and so I spend a lot of time by myself or just with people I'm familiar with. And I was noticing that anytime I went out, I was going to be like getting really anxious, and so I decided I was going to do this art show by myself. I went by myself, I got dropped off, I got picked up, but I was there for about 2 hours just by myself to talk about my art by myself. And it is tough to do that. No one talks about how hard it is to express your work and talk about your ideas and why you started painting, and share that with strangers, and not just once, hundreds of times. No one talks about that, and this was a great lesson for me to learn because I was by myself. And usually I bring family members or friends to these shows, and so they kind of bounce off and, oh my gosh, she's amazing, isn't she? And you see this piece right here, I remember when she painted it. And you know, I have like a buffer around me normally, but not this time. This time it was just me, and so I only had 2 paintings in this first show. The first is Self-Portrait number 1, which is a part of a not yet continued series where I'm just going to be doing self-portraits and examining my own face in order to get better at realistic portraits. And then the second painting was Listening, which is something I painted with a palette knife really early into my painting, journey. And this I painted during an argument, so I had completely different feels, but they did both have specific stories, and so I wanted to share some tips because I did that. I had these 2 processes for these 2 very vastly different paintings, and I shared each of those every single time someone asked me. It was the same story, but I used it repeatedly because when you're in these kind of art galleries, the best thing about them are the food, the wine, and the fact that you don't talk to people for that long, at least in my opinion. It's because they come, they see your art, it's like, oh my god, that's nice, and you kind of interject yourself, well, that's my piece, and then you go into your story. Things that I found helpful was talking about why I painted something, and talking about the process I painted. Like, I spent days meditating on this piece, and I chose these colors specifically because I was feeling such and such, or I painted this as a part of a series because I want to examine my face. I painted this in the midst of an argument because I was feeling strong emotions, and you can tell because of the brush strokes and the blah 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 blah. So stories, having a story that you recall from that piece, and being able to share it, and knowing it well enough to share it again and again, because people will continue to ask you, well, why did you paint this, or why did you choose this? And if you have talking points ahead of time, that's going to help you so much. And another thing is to talk about what you are wanting to do now. Both of these pieces for me were both older pieces. I've been most recently working on like my forest series, and that's the stuff I'm working on. At this art show, I had these two pieces. One was from 2016 and one was from the beginning of 2017. I already moved on from these styles. I spent most of last year experimenting, and so I hop from subject to subject to subject a lot. And so a tip you could take to an art show is to talk about what you're working on now. How is it vastly different from there? And what you're showing in this show, how has it improved your style, your work, your kind of vision as an artist? So I did a lot of that. I was talking about the self-portrait piece and how I worked on it for a month of doing my own face, and this is kind of what came out of it, and how I love that concept, and it was great practice for me. But now that I've gathered those skills on how to paint a realistic face, and I kind of figured out my style, moved on to this series where I'm working on creating fairy tales for these empowered Black women, and it has a relaxed feel. And I showed pictures on my phone because you should always bring pictures of your other work. There's another tip. And so I was talking about this piece and how I worked on it and how I created that story, and then how that had led me to now what I'm working on now, and I showed the picture. I did that with listening too, because I hardly ever work with a palette knife, and I let them know why. I was like, I like to use a palette knife when I'm feeling expressive, when I have no idea what I want to paint and I'm feeling more abstract and I don't have a focus, but the palette knife gives me that. It lets me carve out whatever I'm feeling that moment, and I let them know I usually do that only when I have a strong feeling or strong emptiness of feeling when I start a piece. And then that was a story. And then I talked about how since that piece I've only painted 3 other palette knife pieces, and that's been in 2-year time frame. And so they asked me what were the emotions behind the other pieces, and I showed pictures, because you should always bring your pictures to your art shows. Just have them on your cell phone, or have them on your website so you can direct them to go to your website, and then traffic, yay, have them join your mailing list. Talk about how you're sharing other stories like this daily on your Instagram and in your stories and on your Snapchat and on your Facebook page and blah 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 blah. Great. And then finally, I talked about contests that I'm having. I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but I am throwing an art raffle. I'm giving this piece away right here. This piece you saw a little while ago, but this is being raffled off tomorrow. And I talked about how all of this experience, these 2 different pictures, I'm really developing my style. Here's another live example, and I'm actually raffling off those pieces and sales. So those are some tips from the first show. Now the second show is completely different. This was on a knife. I was anxious about the show. The first time I went to any art show was at this same gallery for the same event, and they invited me back, and I was like, yay! So February 9th, I went to the Art for the Soul art show, and I displayed 3 pieces, and these were all a part of my series, same series as this, my forest series, where those fairy tale pieces. So I had a different kind of idea, and I talked mostly about my themes going forward with these pieces, and that just struck. These pictures to me are my most well developed, and they are my favorite pieces that I've created so far, and they're cohesive, and they have a theme, and they have a background. And if you don't know the background because you're new, because we have a few new people here, basically I am creating the first moments of a fairy tale. Each of these pieces are based off either a poem that I've written or like a quote that comes to mind, but I like to create these like magical moments. And every fairy tale that you ever hear, they start in a forest, and that's why I have these strong black women, you know, on a journey and in the black forest and starting their magical moment. And I had this kind of idea to talk about that, and so I did over and over again with each of the guests who came up to me, and it was so fun because the show started off kind of very slow, and then it picked up so much, and it was so great. And I'm so glad that I had that idea to have this story talk about what the series would lead up to, what the series was about, because I got asked to speak and was recorded on live stream, and I would have been unprepared if I didn't have these stories to tell. And I was nervous, but I knew this story and I knew about this work, and so I was able to share it, and that was great. And so overall, I just want to say small talk is hard enough when it's not focused on you specifically or something you've created and that's touched your heart and everything like that. But there are things to help. You just need to know beforehand, kind of, you know, some themes, some bullet points, some talking points, you know, who are you as an artist? Know that and be able to share that. And I had quite the run being able to express that as an artist. Anyway, I am going to go now. If you'd like to see more artist diaries, because I have quite a few, we have over 30 now, click this playlist here. It'll bring you to the full list starting from the beginning of my art journey, and it's quite something to see. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye now. Have a good one. Hey guys, so I am finally in a quiet little moment because as calming down is wrapping up for the night, you can see my two pieces behind me. And yeah, so this is art show number 1 this week. I have another one a little later, and I will be filming that as well. Bye.